you for inviting me to moderate the panel discussions organized by the High Commission of India with Indian Importers Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The theme is supply chain resilience, ASEAN stepping up to Indian opportunities. We are having this discussion in the shadow of COVID-19 pandemic. Global, regional, as well as most national economies have been severely affected by the shock that it delivered. Apart from the human suffering and the loss of life, supply chain shock was extremely severe. Supply and distribution of so many finished products, raw materials, and components were severely disrupted. We saw shortages for so many things, from toilet paper to personal protective equipment. But the most important point to note is that it is not an isolated incident in recent years that has impacted supply chain. Supply chain shocks have been occurring with increasing frequency in recent years. It's not only the frequency of shocks, but also the magnitude of their impact, which is also on the rise. According to a data published by the World Economic Forum, the annual count of natural disasters alone in the last 20 years is in the range of 150 to 200 per year. That 150 to 200 natural disasters per year, you can imagine how much is the magnitude if I tell you that it used to be in the range of 50 to 100 only per annum, like 20, 30 years before that. Before that, in addition to that, you have cyber attacks, terrorist attacks, international conflicts and tensions, energy price volatility, and all of these have increased in recent years. Importers, above everyone else, know that the weakest link in a chain defines the strength and resilience of the entire chain of your supply ecosystem. So to strengthen that, one cannot be over-dependent on certain suppliers. If importing companies and importing countries have to prepare and build a robust supply chain, then they need to diversify their supply sources. They need to have more than one strong supplier. They need to move beyond one cheapest source to more comprehensively evaluating their potential suppliers. It is in this context that this discussion is extremely relevant. I'm glad that the High Commission of India and the Indian Importers Chambers of Commerce and Industry are looking at this in the long term. The aim is to understand how ASEAN countries and companies can be a strong and reliable long-term partners for India and Indian companies to build a resilient supply chain. I was looking at the data that the organizers, Mamta ji and her team had put together. I think it is important for everyone here to know that Indian imports from ASEAN countries in US dollar billion was over 67 billion US dollars. Indonesia contributed over $19 billion, Singapore almost 17 billion, Malaysia around 13 billion, Thailand around 9.4, Vietnam around $8.6 billion. So just these countries add up to US $67 billion. To put this number in perspective, that's next only to China, from whom we import the maximum. And that's US 89 billion or 89.65 to be exact billion dollars worth of goods. So ASEAN, just these half a dozen countries are giving you just a little below Chinese total imports that India has from China. I was also trying to find out from these, what are the top products that are not petrochemicals, not palm oil, or traditional items like rubber, tin, lead, etc. So what are the other major products imported by India from these countries? And here are the top few that I found. Finished electronic goods, USB drives, other storage devices, laptop and the like, electronic and computer components, non-industrial diamonds from Singapore, air conditioners, refrigerators, photocopiers, printers, projectors, loudspeakers, TV cameras, digital cameras, mobile phones. Of course, these may be from multinational corporations, but think about it. These are coming from Thailand, from Vietnam, from Philippines, Malaysia, and so on. Boring and sinking machines, ferronickel, aluminum oxide, copper wires, tubes, copper tubes, copper pipes, aluminum alloys, wires, stainless steel scrap, acetic acid, monocarboxylic fatty acid, so many things, including pulses, of course, from Myanmar. So, given this background information, my request to my esteemed panelists is that from the Singapore and ASEAN side, please talk about your experience in exporting from ASEAN region to India or other countries. And what are the strengths of ASEAN companies and why Indian importers should buy from this region? And my request to the panelists from the Indian side is, please highlight what you are currently importing or your members and so on are currently importing from ASEAN. And what are you looking to import from this region and why? Let us all start with about 5 minutes each and then have another round. You know, as we say in India, we should do Sri Ganesh before starting anything. So I will request Mr. Gajanan Shenoy first to share his experience in exporting from ASEAN in dealing with the suppliers in this region. And then he can be followed by Mr. Veer Sagar and then Mr. Himanshu Kare and so on. Gajanan?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Venkat. Very nice. I'm happy that you draw the reference to Gajanan. So that's nice of you. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Very nice to be a part of this panel. And I want to start by thanking the Indian Importers Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting me to speak on this August panel. You know, many years back when I started, there was one quotation which an experienced client had once told me. When someone offers you something for free, it usually ends up to be the most expensive transaction. Today, I find this more true than ever. And today's topic of discussion of being resilient enough and to keep multiple sources of supply goes to the heart of addressing this issue of why cheap and free things end up being more expensive sooner than later. You know, a little background. Over the last 2.5 decades, I have been in the import business, importing from mostly Southeast Asia, China, India, Turkey, and even Europe. And we are working in textiles, in building materials, and food products, paper products, and a variety of consumer products, mostly in the manufacturing segment. And many of these products we have sourced from across vendors, maybe hundreds of vendors. And there are some very good insights which I could pen down, which I felt, you know, it makes a lot of practical business sense and money sense to buy just not from one big country, as Mr. Venkat has elaborated so eloquently before me. That it is not the cheapest source which will be the best source. So I hope that I can highlight some of these points to my fellow importers in India. So let me give 3 reasons why I found ASEAN to be an attractive source to import from. First thing is, the suppliers here, the manufacturers here, they value relationships. To start a relationship in Southeast Asia, it is difficult. Initially, it takes time for the manufacturer to understand you. Unlike our big neighbor, it is not that you go into the country, go to one fair, Canton Fair or somewhere, you meet a bunch of suppliers and finalize orders. No. In Southeast Asia, it does require a little bit of time to meet up with suppliers. But then once the ice is broken, the manufacturer really values the relationship. Indeed, and in action. Now, this has got two clear advantages. The first, of course, is that he supports us in terms of pricing, in terms of promotions, so it helps the business itself to grow. And secondly, what it does, it acts as a barrier from our competitors. So when our competitors try to enter there, you can be assured that your supplier in Southeast Asia usually backs you up. And this is not the case when you buy from our big neighbor. So this is one way which will help us to penetrate the markets in our region, in our states, in our cities, in our villages more deeper. The second reason is to deal with the price negotiation and the quality of the product. When we try to finalize contracts, it is normal that we will negotiate in terms of price. Now, when you buy from Southeast Asia, the manufacturers manufacture to their standard. Once the price is fixed, the quality is never changed. Whatever you negotiate, the price is off the table. But my experience has been, when you do this in China, for example, they do adjust the quality according to the price at which you have finalized the transaction. And this surprises many importers at the end of the contract. So you can be assured when you buy from Southeast Asia that the manufacturers don't change the quality. This does affect, again, as we started, the feeling of being penny wise and pound foolish. You might save in a particular transaction, but then you may end up being surprised when your goods don't move in the market and they tend to come back to your stores. So that is the second reason why you find that Southeast Asia is a very attractive, and it has remained attractive for me to continue to buy from here. Every shipment that we do out of China, we need to inspect them. We need to do a physical inspection of the goods, count the packages, check the qualities. And what we buy from Southeast Asia, you don't have to do it as often. You don't have to do it because the manufacturer is as conscious as you are of the quality and the shipment. The third reason, the suppliers in this region are not as cutthroat. Perhaps one reason for that is because they don't compete among themselves as much. You don't find that there is one product which moves and there are 100 people who are imitating it and copying it. So there's no copycat business in this region. If you take a particular set of product, you will find that there are a handful of good manufacturers who stick to their quality and deliver on that quality. They don't tend to outdo each other. And that leads to the fact that they tend to stick. That makes them appoint one distributor in one market. We used to buy textiles from a factory in Bandung in Indonesia. And this was for a shipment to a South African country. When there were buyers coming in from South African countries, from a neighboring country, actually it was from Mozambique, we found that the manufacturer actually called us and told us that, yes, there is a customer from here, it's better that you handle him, so that the distribution is kept sacrosanct. So this is the kind of a relationship, this is the kind of experience that is there from the ASEAN region. And in not so far of a term, it makes much more sense to work with manufacturers and with suppliers in this region. So in a nutshell, I want to conclude by encouraging all the importers in the chamber to look for an alternate, not to depend on one big country because they are easy to buy, it is very cheap to finalize, the price is good, easy to finalize business may not be your best sense. It not only makes, it is not just that you need to move away from one source for an emotional sense, but also it makes excellent business sense. So with this, I would like to conclude, and back to you, Mr. Venkat.
Thanks, Gajanan, for sharing your experiences with ASEAN suppliers. We'll come back for a further round of discussions. They were very encouraging indeed. Mr. Veersagar, in electronics and related businesses that you look at, like what are the things that India buys from the region? What are the other important items that can be procured from this region from your experience and knowledge?
At the outset, I would like to thank the Supply Chain Resilience Forum and IICI for giving me this chance and this opportunity to present a model of virtual global company to draw the best from each country and create a competitive, optimum, and resilient supply chain. And I'll draw on an experience of my own company and extend it to the industry, to the country. When I was heading DCM, we used to export a lot of board designs, boards, manufactured boards, computer boards to USA. USA, as everyone knows, is a very competitive and price conscious market. So we had to give them the best. So what we did, we said, let's pick up the skills available in the neighboring countries, the best from each country, put them together and then make a product and export it. And we found that very, very cost effective and good. Unfortunately, there were internal problems of clearances, etc. in India, bureaucratic problems which made this collapse. But the process still stayed in my mind. Now let's talk about Singapore and India. The close ties between India and Singapore have a history rooted in strong commercial, cultural, and people-to-people link across the millennium. In fact, Singapore is one of the countries where you go to buy, you think you're buying in India. And you have the only place where they get gold, which is 24 carats. And it takes Indian currency. Of course, now Indian currency is much easily accepted. Singapore is a great nation that has shown us that the size is no barrier to scale of achievements or the strength of a nation's voice in the world. But Singapore's success also lies in the harmony of a multicultural society. Singapore is both an leading investment source and destination for India. It is the country for which we signed, the first country for which India signed a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement. A lot of funding comes from there. In fact, remember the panel is asking me, are you getting funding from Singapore? I mean, a lot of startups are getting funding from Singapore. They're moving away from Chinese funding and all are moving to Singapore. India has imported 3 billion worth of electronic goods. Now focusing only on electronic goods, but that's the only thing I understand, from Singapore. And this consists of integrated circuits, microassemblies, transmission equipment, TV cameras, notebooks, diodes, transistors, receivers, all these things that you're talking about. USB card, USBs, digital storage devices. Our IT companies are in, but similarly, Indian companies are helping the IT companies in Singapore to stay smart. We are providing them with many areas of development priorities. Singapore is a key partner in India in the development of technologies for smart cities, urban solutions, financial sectors, skill development, logistics, and industrial parks. So India and Singapore are contributing to each other's prosperity. And now we are building new partnerships in the digital world. As an entrepreneur from IT sector, I will be speaking a little on the Indian IT sector. The technological advances at a pace not witnessed before are transforming the ways and means of doing business. Gone are the days of traditional technologies. The disruptive technologies are the key prospects for better tomorrow. IT companies in India continue to innovate and deliver total solutions worldwide to create a win-win synergy. Indian software exports are estimated to be about 142 billion, up from 135 billion in spite of the COVID. Despite the ongoing pandemic, India will still register a growth of in this year also. Indian IT industry, the IT SMEs are exploring global markets and catering accordingly. Indian IT can cater ready-made solutions in all verticals of IT, including artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, robotics, process automation, blockchain. See, what COVID has now done to IT is it made it across industry. It's a enabling technology rather than an IT which was run by the IT managers. Cyber security and Internet of Things will be the new game changers. Today, there are 12 billion actively connected services. In the next 3 to 4 years, they will go up to 30 billion. And these will require new drivers, new embedded software, ASICs, and more important, security. Another thing that everybody is forgetting when this thing spread is the ease of hacking, the ease of which you can hold the world to ransom. You can lock up hotels, you can lock up cars, you can lock up people in their houses by hacking. So this, as we go to more and more intelligent houses, intelligent cities, interconnected equipments, we need to get major emphasis on security. And this is where Singapore and India can work together. India is creating India is setting for itself very aggressive targets for smart cities. And this is where ASEAN countries can join India to work together. And Singapore can act as a gateway. Today, Indian IT companies, especially IT SMEs, are becoming product companies and are catering to a whole range in various verticals. And these verticals include not only robotics and process automation, but also automobiles. In fact, today, if you look at a car, more than 65% to 70% is electronic. So cars are becoming more and more. And if you go into the electric cars, they're probably 90% is electronic. COVID has reset the way we do business, but it has also created new opportunities and new challenges. It is creating a digital and virtual world with the aid of IT and telecom. I mean, the biggest example of this virtual world is we having a global conference sitting in different parts of the world and having this discussion. This was not possible or thought of a couple of years back. Therefore, this gives opportunity to each country to become efficient. Hence, collaboration and optimization becomes a watchword. From a buyer-seller relationship, we will now have to create a collaborative, resilient supply chain network where we can pick the best from each partner country to create a virtual global country with SAARC and ASEAN countries as stakeholders. We can optimize the total supply chain and create cost-effective products and services. India is emerging as a large market for artificial intelligence, ASIC, data mining, telecom, medical equipment, auto components, etc. With this large base of qualified engineers, it becomes the ideal partner for creating prototypes, of creating programs and designs. Singapore has a good infrastructure for creation of prototypes, and then Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia for mass production. Singapore becomes, because of the infrastructure for imports and exports, can be a good consolidator. Singapore can also act as a payment gateway and financial exchange. With these new technologies, digitization, and linked world, there's immense scope to cooperate and ride on each other's strength. Every problem has an opportunity hiding inside it. COVID pandemic has thrown up a new opportunity and new acceptance. Once again, I thank the Supply Chain Resilience Forum for organizing this wonderful conference and inviting me to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Veersagar, for sharing your thoughts on how ASEAN and India can collaborate. Mr. Himanshu Khare, what are the products or services that Madhya Pradesh imports from ASEAN, and what are the other items that would be of interest to your members?
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me on this forum of esteemed and learned luminaries belonging to various fields. Thank you, Mamta ji, Rekha ji also. The gist of this discussion on the supply chain resilience that I was listening to Mr. Gajanan, Mr. V. Sagar, of course, Mr. Venkat. You are so much seniors in this industry. Uh, the thing that what we feel in as Indian entrepreneurs is that we uh, go by the trust, like Mr. Gajanan had rightly said. We go by the trust, like we feel much more comfortable, much more compatible with ASEAN nations as far as import is concerned, and as rightly pointed out, a big neighbor which was a big supplier of their products to India, we don't feel that much comfortable enough because the quality aspect deteriorates when we negotiate on the price factor. And I started my journey long back, about 10 to about 12 years back, in the international market by visiting the Canton Fair. And that Canton Fair used to is such a big I should say समुंदर है वो बहुत बड़ा. It's a big sea of opportunities if you are able to know and understand the companies. That and when we felt that after our first visit and when we tried to import some products, and we were not we were taken for a ride, not to say very clearly, but the things which were promised, they were never fulfilled. So gradually we moved to Vietnam, we went to Indonesia, we visited Malaysia and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So area-based needs, area-based strengths are the core, and the countries which are dominant in different sectors, we move to such cluster of nations. Like as far as Indian imports are concerned and industries in Madhya Pradesh are concerned, the after the COVID part, the hardest hit industry is the auto component industry, which was largely dependent upon China. And in Madhya Pradesh, we have an auto cluster near Indore, and lot many automobile companies are doing very well over there. Newspaper and paper board, again, Mr. V. Sakar has rightly pointed out, electricals and electronics, then machinery equipments. We are largely dependent upon uh, good quality, economical machine components from Vietnam and Malaysia also. Then there is animal and veg fat and oils also. The animal oils, the veg fat oils. Then machinery, organic chemicals. Furniture is another sector which is being largely imported from these nations. And I could narrate an example that I'm stationed in Jabalpur, a town in Madhya Pradesh. It's a town of a population of about say 20 lakhs or so, known as a defense hub here, and about 500 trucks of wood, the teak, sal, the mango wood, per day. It goes to Rajasthan for value addition, and there are a lot many seasoning plants. There are a lot many furniture units from in Rajasthan. Then they manufacture the finished product, and we tend to buy those products on a very higher rate. The raw material primarily belonging to ourselves. So value addition is not being applied here. It is done somewhere else. And we procure that material from such places at a higher cost. So furniture is another big solution which the ASEAN nation had offered, and on a cheap rate also, and long-term quality aspect also. Then another big segment which I strongly feel that together the Singapore, the Indian chamber, the Singapore chamber, we can do a lot more is the smart city solutions. And in India, what we see, what we have seen when this smart city concept was floated, that Singapore was supposed to be an idol of India, and we always have strived also to replicate what Singapore has done in terms of smart city excellence and the quality of life for the people of its country, of this country. So smart city solutions, there are about 1999 plus cities which have been declared smart, and there is a lot many funding also being done by the government. So smart city solutions also, it could be security, it could be intelligence, intelligent traffic system, it could be integrated command and control center, it could be water treatment, it could be sewer treatment, it could be anything, whichever concept gels with the smart city. And Singapore can also, and the ASEAN nations also, they can act very well, conducively to the Indian needs and demands in the smart city concept. Another segment which is very promising is the sports industry. The sports, the fitness equipments manufactured in Taiwan, Vietnam, they are in huge demand in India, and all the sports products also, which are in huge demand. Then another big sector, which is the government of India has provided a good budget in this union budget, which was declared on the 1st of February, is the construction and the infrastructure sector. The construction and the infrastructure sector is will take India to new horizons, and I don't have any inhibition to say that we have probably we have progressed from what we were about 10 years back in terms of roads, in terms of state roads, in terms of national highways. We have transformed and we have progressed a lot in this segment. And the infrastructure part, the Singapore and the nation and the ASEAN nations as a counterpart can do wonders in this segment, because now the things are moving on a global manner. The tenders are floated globally. So we also need good partners, good channels who could explore business opportunities in India and in Madhya Pradesh also. And definitely we as a team can do lot many business, explore lot many business possibilities in these segments. On this important and in this August forum, I would like to comment on another thing, like what we feel, what are the glitches in importing from such nations. Primarily, the issue is that about the reliability of the other partner. Who is that company? What that company is into, and who are the promoters? How could we like fill that gap? Because not everyone, I shouldn't say this, but not everyone is ethical, not everyone is decent, and it could be some way the other around also. So how could we connect to the reliable partners in the ASEAN nations? And our chamber can act very well in bridging this gap also. And I am very much optimistic. If this barrier is if this gap is bridged, then Indian imports and definitely Indian exports also to ASEAN nation would increase, because we go by the references. If Mr. Venkat says that XYZ company in Malaysia is doing very well, and Himanshu, you go by my words, so definitely I'll honor Mr. Venkat's word and I'll move to that particular company. But in terms of large segment, this the reliability part, like few companies, international agencies that like Dun and Bradstreet also, they are exploring this segment, and they have, in fact, they are doing quite well as far as the Chinese companies are concerned. So they do the quality checking, they do the rating of such companies, and then they deliver that exhaustive report on a very nominal charges to the Indian companies or whosoever needs that concise report. So our chamber can definitely do this study, and we take some charges from the probable buyers also, that we provide the entire rating and the rated reports of the other party as well. Now, as far as Mr. Venkat, this the bilateral trade between the ASEAN and ASEAN nations and India is concerned, I would like to suggest on this forum that we should plan cluster of opportunities, cluster of different, I should say subjects, cluster of different products. Like Indonesia might excel in few things, Malaysia has a dominance on the other things. China, Taiwan and Vietnam also, they do excel in electronics and electricals and XYZ. Now, if we form different clusters of their strengths, and then such clusters are operational and they are being made operational in India, so it would tend to simplify the things. Like, we don't need to roam about, and we don't need to Google, and we don't need to go by the references as such. These clusters would definitely help the exporters and the importers, the exim part primarily, to explore the opportunities. Like, suppose if I need to import a big consignment of, say, sport goods, then I should know that Vietnam has the best of the assets in this segment. So maybe I would move to Vietnam, and and in that case I wouldn't waste my time and my energy, and I would focus on the companies of Vietnam. Suppose if I want to import the tourism and the education and the smart city solutions, no more looking back. Singapore can be a big player in this segment. I would channelize my energy, my partner's energy, and my focus would be entirely on the companies of Singapore. So Ms. Mamta and the team, and we all of us jointly would definitely develop such cluster of opportunities which are operational in India, connected to the different nations, just to just to make the thing simply fight, and maybe the ease of doing business part also, which the government of India has been strongly advocating into. This would soon be a reality. So I think these such suggestions, if we take forward, it could help us out in a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Kare. So this is interesting. I think a couple of points that jumped out for me, were that, like, auto cluster. You spoke of auto clusters, and I think from ASEAN, Thailand is a well-known, place for auto clusters, and I think that's an area that the chamber and others could explore how, what are the things that they could look at from Thailand. Interesting points that you mentioned about vegetable fat, animal fat, and so on, and also furniture imports from ASEAN region. That kind of reminded me that Gajanan has some experience in furniture products from this region. Gajanan, do you want to comment on that and share some experience? Maybe other people also are interested in knowing how this works, and do you have some point? You have to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Gaja. Yeah, thanks.
Good.
And,
yeah.
and any other relevant experiences.
I was very nice to. First thing is, I was very happy to listen to both Mr. V. Sagar ji and Himanshu ji. It was very nice to hear the perspective coming from India, and it is good to see with especially what Himanshu ji was saying, how the outlook of the Indian importer has changed a lot over the years. I remember even about 25 years back, when I was staying actually physically in Indonesia for a few years, we used to have buyers coming in from India. And we as Indians, when we go to any country, be it China, Hong Kong, I'm sure that people who have been, many of you who would have traveled, say, 2 decades before really India opened up, even when you get into the tourist shops, the general remark was that if it is an Indian, we are not entertained as well as a foreigner is. So I'm sure that people who have gone outside India realized it. One thing that we Indians, when we go and buy, we have been having the habit of checking prices and checking prices and checking prices. So there has been a tendency wherein we have not finalized business many times. So the general impression that has carried across many countries has been that Indians just inquire, they never buy, So that has been the impression, let's say 10, 15 years back, but things have changed. Now, when things have changed, China has opened up. And as Himanshu ji said rightly, you go to the Canton Fair, or you go to one of the various fair, or you go to one of their big wholesale markets, it is so easy to finalize business. And they finalize business, the prices are cheap. You put the goods in a container, bring it back home to India and sell it and make some money. And there is a quick buck made in the process. So now when you step back and think what we have done, we have in the process, today we are a much bigger importing country, as Mr. Venkat said in his introduction. But then a lot of those imports can easily come from those other destinations, not necessarily from one big country. And to do that, we need to take that extra step. The reason that we buy furniture from Malaysia versus money furniture, I mean, a lot of furniture does come in from China. China manufactures more furniture. I mean, Guangzhou and the nearby region, there is a city called a furniture city in China, and so does Malaysia. But on purely on merit, the importers tend to buy from Malaysia. Malaysia produces good quality furniture at a competitive price. The bottom line is the price as well, as much as it is the quality. So we have had so much experiences when we buy today furniture, sofas, dining tables, we buy out of China, we need to inspect those goods. When we buy the same furniture out of Malaysia, we don't need to inspect the goods. So that directly means that you reduce your cost of transaction. You reduce the supply chain, which means you can cycle more number of times. So you get designs, you get more variety of designs from, and if you go down to Indonesia, Indonesia offers far more better furniture than even Malaysia. But then, yes, it requires an extra step wherein we need to go to the smaller towns. There are lovely cities just outside Jakarta, which are Bekasi and surrounding areas, where a lot of furniture is made and the minimum quantities are far smaller. If you go to China, you need to if you want to make a design, you need to order a container or two for a minimum. And if we are coming, because India is a big country, but then ultimately businesses are small. You're coming from smaller towns, villages. A single distributor doesn't have the whole country to sell to. So if a single distributor wants to have a variety in his wholesale retail chain, for him, Southeast Asia is a far better source, because he can select a minimum quantity of a design, and he can have a more bigger variety. Yes, he might end up paying 5 to 10% more price, but then it definitely pays off easily within the first couple of lots. So that is one reason. So the mindset change which might be required on the Indian side is to persist a bit more, and that persistence usually pays. What usually happens is, when it is cheap and easy, it's not long lasting. That's the trade-off that we have to see. And I hope that with the corona, with the virus now, and the fact that we are looking at alternate sources, it will help India very much. And the second thing that I want to add is, let us not project this as a fact that we just want to import from ASEAN into India. I mean, ultimately the import is not a bad word. I mean, it's not that all of forex reserves are going and we are buying goods. The import has to be a part of a supply chain. I mean, when we are importing into India, the import is going to be part of a re-export. It is going to be re-exported out of India. This is one. Or as you said, value added. You are going to buy auto parts, and these auto parts are going to get value added. These are some things that we are not currently manufacturing in India for a variety of reasons. And possibly the least of those reasons is because we are not technologically adept, because India is today getting as technologically adept as any other Southeast Asian, for that matter, any other Western nation. So the reason could be a cost advantage. The reason could be a production efficiency. The reason could be the scale of the industry that is there. It may not make sense to put a manufacturing unit, and that is why we import, and it is a part of a supply chain. That is what I think India will have to gear up towards. Make the import formalities more, let's say, more simpler, more transparent. Luckily, the current dispensation has definitely made things more open. So it's not just that you import because people have got some extra money hidden somewhere or something. No, it's because that you import for the right reasons. You import goods for the right reasons. They are distributed in the right way. And this can really project this can really help to push the Indian economy, which it wouldn't if it didn't have this import. That's what I would like to point out. Yeah.
In fact, that's a very good point that both Gajanan and Mr. Khare brought up. To think in terms of supply chain. In fact, I would say go beyond that. Think in terms of supply network, right? If you look at it globally today, fundamentally the competition is between networks. It's no more company versus companies. The real competitions around the world. Let us step a little bit higher to see what is exactly happening around the world. I know I'm taking a similar view like Mr. Veer Sagar. And you can see, and then we have a lot of things to learn. Competition is not between Nike and Adidas. It is the whole ecosystem of supply network that Nike has versus the system that Adidas has. It is not Apple versus Samsung. It is the whole iOS ecosystem versus the Android ecosystem. And there are people who are different players, different contributors, and the companies have learned to manage these complete supplier ecosystem. And that is the mindset that we have to bring. Otherwise, we would be thinking in terms of export, import. Export is good, import is bad. We should come out of that mindset. Many countries have come out of that mindset. And like Veer Sagarji said, that how can you integrate these kinds of things? I mean, he spoke a lot about the, software hardware combination, but the same concepts essentially applies to whether you look at automotive components and automotive industries, whether it is other industries, that import must be, easy, flexible, and we should look at, couple of reliable supply sources, because if you don't have the correct couple of alternative supply sources, we all semiconductor, we are not the first ones. Just in time and like you sole supplier, all these concepts which were literally worshipped for last 10-15 years have all been challenged in the last 5 years again and again. You had the Thailand flooding, you had the Taiwanese earthquake, you had the Fukushima and the tsunami, and the Japanese supply chain got interrupted. So that's what I was saying in my beginning, in the introductory note, that again and again supply chains have been tested for being over reliant on one supply source. Nobody denies that you should have that supply source or not, but you should have plus one at least minimum, right? And then I think Gajanan highlighted, and also Himanshuji, talked about like the, his positive experiences and so on. And I think I would like also, invite Veer Sagarji to share some more points before we, do a wrap up.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I'm going to turn the argument around to services.
Mm-hmm.
Import of or export of services, which is a collaboration of services. And one of the things that comes in mind because of COVID is the medical services.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shortage of good, competent doctors worldwide. It's not it's very strongly fed in India, but worldwide. So what we can now do, which I've been trying to advocate in my own area, because I do based predominantly back office, right, in related to the medical area, is called second opinion. You see, today medical is so high in most countries that unless you have insurance, you can't afford medical. And secondly, if you have insurance, the insurance really dictates what treatment you will get and what will happen. So if the patient had an access to a second opinion, where he doesn't have to go and meet a doctor, but on the net, right, you have a good doctor at one end, specialist, and the patient at the other with a local doctor, and and he can see all the reports and give ideas, give a saying this is what you need to get done, give his own opinion. And there's some area where I think will be great benefit later on. Similarly, treatment. And as we look, okay, you're lucky most of ASEAN countries are fairly well off. But as you go further back, there are countries and cities with no hospitals, no good doctors. And again, you can have doctors at one end doing telemedicine with the other guy. And if you can train people on cricket, right, on the web, I'm sure we can look at patients on the web and tell him what's wrong with him and what treatment can he get. At least give him the first aid so that he can then move to a specialist hospital if required. This was one of the areas where I thought, and since India has a lot of doctors and very good doctors, maybe this is one area where we can explore as a community, not as India, not as Philippines, not as Singapore, but as a community, that these are the requirements of the community. And we as country, Singapore has excellent facilities, for example, which are not easily available in India. So a lot of these facilities can be made available to an Indian patient online at much, much less cost. I thought this is just another thought I know everybody's talking about products, but I think services is going to be a very major uh, effect on our lives as we go forward, especially after COVID, when people are accepting online. People are accepting, yes, we don't have to physically meet. Looking at the TV is great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So let me capture some of the points that you all made for the before we wrap up. A couple of interesting points that I noted from you all were like Visagaji spoke about more than once about using Singapore as a center for coordinating across India, ASEAN, whether it is supply chain, whether it is services, and so on. Also as a center for doing pilot projects and for finance and financing cross-border operations, whether it is products or services. Himanshu ji, said that we should look at have area-based focus. And he spoke about auto clusters. He spoke about opportunities in paper and paper boards, and I guess Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia have experience in these sectors, and they are major exporters for this region. He spoke about vegetable fat and animal fat and so on. Furniture imports, I think we had an opportunity to look at and talk about from both sides. And smart city solutions they talked about. Sports industry, interesting to know that fitness equipments could also have an opportunity in India, and as the fitness awareness and consciousness is growing, construction and infrastructure segments could have opportunities. Again, obviously, it's in a sector where you have both products possibilities as well as service possibilities, and contracting, consulting, and so on and so forth. So multiple opportunities there. We talked about reliability of partners, and Gajanan set the tone by talking about how reliable his experiences have been with partners in India, and Himanshu ji re-emphasized saying that chamber can be a place used to filter, to connect, evaluate good people, as well as he connected it back to his earlier thing, area-based, cluster-based focus on can we evaluate which countries to look at for certain sectors and clusters from a chamber perspective, and so that people who are looking from the Indian side of the sector can look at those reports and say, hey, what, furniture, okay, fine, I can look at like Malaysia, I can look at Indonesia, these kinds of things, and so on and so forth. Those were some interesting suggestions that came out of our discussions, to have some country-wise reports which can be prepared. And interesting thing in the services sector was that could we have medical for services and so on, second opinion opportunities from, it can go either way. And but definitely if there are certain high-end, consulting possibilities for people to stay still in India, send some reports and things like that and get consultations from overseas doctors and so on from import perspective, and or vice versa, and so on and so forth. Interesting. That's also is a twist on that concept of how Indian tutors are providing tuition services in US and things like that. So yeah, there are interesting service opportunities and so on and so forth. So excellent points that have come out, and I think some are from the product side, some are from the services side, and so on. So maybe before we wrap up, I mean, some final thoughts, final words, some ideas that you had missed out. So let's you can sort of share that now. Gajanan, anything that you wanted to additionally, maybe some you've always, every time we give a mic to you, you have come out with some experience based stuff. So any more interesting anecdotal or experiential learning that you can share with others? Hey, you have to unmute yourself, Gaja. Gaja, unmute yourself, please. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Let me, Venkat, thank you so much. Well, let me conclude. Let me say this one thing, because I don't want to take too much of the time of everybody. But I would like to say one closing thing, that every challenge throws up an opportunity. And so this challenge of COVID has really opened us, has really given us the opportunity to look for other new sources. And we are looking today, today's discussion is specifically about ASEAN. So we can look at the gold mine that is sitting. We are sitting in Singapore, and we have seen the opportunities that exists. Whether it is like, for example, the cocoa exports which takes up out of Malaysia into India, the way in which this manufacturer with whom I have been working, we've been buying from them for exports to my other markets. And when we had a manufacturer from Hyderabad who came in and who wanted to buy from them for manufacturing biscuits, they were very clear. They said, sorry, sir, we are already shipping to somebody in India. So that is the kind of loyalty that you have. The idea is not that there are the people here are far more satisfied. They are more self-satisfied with themselves. They are not going to go and kill next door, both in your market, or there is going to be a second competitor rising up in their country. So I will say that to appeal to all the Indian importers, that please do look again at the ASEAN region for a fantastic opportunity, and that will definitely stand us in good stead for the future. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Gaja. Ms. Veersagar.
Thank you. Apart from reiterating my model, which I had said, stop looking at yourself as a company, but as an Inc., India Inc., Singapore Inc., and then we get together and form a World Inc., a virtual company, so that we can optimize and go and conquer the rest of the world. Now, one of the things that's come out of COVID or generally is this China syndrome. People are beginning to find that China is very, very expensive in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And at the bottom end, previously there was a time where the Diwali lights or Ganesh or anything was all Chinese. This year, there was hardly any sale of Diwali lights from China, because people have realized that they don't even last through the 3 days of Diwali. And when you go to a dealer, he says, look, there's an LED light. You buy from a Wipro or a Philips, I will give you 1 year guarantee. If you buy from China, it's your problem. It might last you 1 year. It might go off tomorrow morning. Don't come back to me. So people have now realized that buying cheap in the initial stages is not good, and they're all looking for alternatives. And as a result, and it's just not India, it's worldwide. US buyers, for example. So now what's happening is there is a rush for getting them into their respective countries, moving China out to respective countries. And here also, I think we should be a little more broad-minded. Instead of looking and saying, okay, come to my country and forget the rest, form a group and say, here are 3 ASEAN countries which you can move entire China out, which gives you benefit to us, right, without giving everything away to the customer, and yet have you each one doing well. And it is one of the government to government kind of things, which I know you and I can't do. But this time now has come, to think beyond political boundaries. Unfortunately, it's going the reverse way. Thank you.
Yeah, it's about +1 concept, right? I mean, we're not talking about like excluding any supplier that you currently have, but you must have definitely a +1. Himanshu sir, over to you.
After such good deliberations from my fellow colleagues, one interesting subject that we have been that we were unable to touch is the tourism sector. The tourist inflow from India to the ASEAN nations, if you go by the figures in the last, say, maybe 10 to 12 years past, it has grown phenomenally. And many tourists from such nations also, maybe the inflow from the ASEAN nations tourists to India might not be that much high, but Indian tourists to ASEAN nations is pretty high. And moreover, we connect culturally also, we connect spiritually also. When I visited Bali, I was like overwhelmed by the presence of our Hindu gods over there. And I didn't miss an opportunity to visit each and every temple, which I was being guided by the tourist itinerary. So I visited each and every temple. So we connect medically, like Mr. Veersagar said, we connect heritagely, the heritage part is there, and we connect spiritually. So tourism is another big segment which can be encashed. And I should say that we should go by this slogan that pride of being an ASEAN person. pride of being an ASEAN person, be ASEAN by ASEAN. That should be the core, that should be the narrative which should be there, so that the entire focus of all the business dimensions get focused entirely on the ASEAN nations. India is nowadays rurally in the rural area, the infrastructure part is being strengthened by the government in by all means. So the new future of economic development now moves to the rural India. So there are lot many business opportunities, be it agricultural, be it infrastructure, be it medical. Because post COVID, the things have like taken a very bad shape, and the inflow of patients from the rural India to the urban city has grown like anything, and it has like we have learned that it might be that the infrastructure in the rural segment, as far as the medical facilities are concerned, in India needs to be revamped, needs to be looked up to. There is a very big business and investment opportunity in the rural segment also. So we should like think both ways. The import from ASEAN nations to India in terms of tourism, it should be increased. And I hope Mr. Gajanan Shenoy could play a pivotal role in this segment also. And
Sure.
as far as, because the spiritual tourism, like India also offers spiritual tourism. The Durga Puja of Bengal, maybe the Ram Leela of Delhi, Ram Leela of
Absolutely.
Allahabad, Mysore ka Dashera, likewise.
Sure,
So we may
sure, sure.
also entertain and invite people from ASEAN nation to visit India, and therefore we connect spiritually also. And I go again by my buzzword that be ASEAN by ASEAN, pride of being ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we would like to thank the Indian High Commission, the Indian Importers Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Veer Sagar, Mr. Himanshu Kare, my friend Gajanan Shenoy, and all the importers in India who would be participating in this deliberations organized by the High Commission and the chambers. So my closing line will be that, like, don't let a challenge or a crisis go waste, right? And if you have not thought of ASEAN region so far, or the things that you have been doing is only minimal, then reevaluate and consider ASEAN in addition to whatever else and wherever else you're sourcing from. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.